Hi, Jess. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today. Welcome
Thank
to our
you.
podcast. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Cold, and my body still is on Chicago time.
Oh, yes, I forgot about that.
Yeah, my mind is trying very hard to convince my body, but yeah, I'm working on that. But I'm good. I'm
Good.
good. It's exciting to be here.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, so for context, we're here in Geneva due to Africana's exhibition, Ubuntu I Am Because We Are, which you take part. And we just want to know more about you as an artist. So how would you describe yourself as an artist, the themes you approach, how it all started, how were the arts introduced in your life?
Describe myself as an artist. It's
It's a
seems like a
simple but
simple question,
complicated.
but I'm like, as an artist, okay. How can I make the separation from myself and the artist? I don't think I can make the separation. I think I am just me. I am Jess. I'm Kenyan. I am African. And now I am black. um, and I make art. I make art.
And so did you said it came very naturally to you from the way that you say that you can't separate Jess from the artist because you are an
Yeah, I
artist.
mean, maybe I speak for most artists when I say we are just our work. We cannot make that separation, because all your life is goes into your art. All your feelings, everything goes into your art. So it's really hard, for me at least, to make the separation. The work is myself. I am the work.
I love that.
So I don't have a description to describe myself separately as an artist.
Yeah. And how would you describe the themes you approach? What themes do you approach through your work?
I have recently gone into colonial histories, and I'm enjoying it. The work is relatively new. I will say that I am just barely scratching the surface of these histories, and I am on a process of discovery and wonder and shock and terror, and it's been quite an interesting journey so far. I don't want to say too much because I know you'll still ask in another question. But yeah, most of the work that I'm doing now is on colonial histories in Africa.
And how did your journey in the art world start?
That's quite a long story. My mom got me into art.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, I remember in high school, we were making decisions on what subjects to choose from. And I went to this high school that was privileged to offer art as one of the subjects, because in Kenya, not all high schools offer art. So yeah, I had to choose between art and home science. And I don't know, I can't remember what else. So my mom said, like, oh, choose art, choose art. And I just chose it, without thinking too much about it. And I started doing art there and I loved it. And I mean, that's just how it started. My interest in art, my starting to hone my abilities. And then much later down the line, I worked at Kwana Trust Art Center, which is now Kwana Trust Artist Collective in Kenya. Working within an arts community that really inspired a lot the work that I was doing then, both thematically and technically. And it's just been a long journey. And then BC Silva with Asiko. So there's been very many people and events that have sort of nurtured me into now, the artist I am now.
Yeah,
Does that make sense?
it makes total sense. And I think that it's so interesting that you say that your mom motivated you to pursue the arts, because I think that that's kind of rare. And I think that that's one of the issues, that a lot of people don't see that as a pathway to follow. So I think you had the privilege of having that support that I think a lot of people probably don't have. So that's interesting.
Yeah. I mean, my mom at that time was working in an organization that shared the space with with another organization that was a not-for-profit thing for artists. And she used to see artists interact with artists. She was familiar with that sort of lifestyle and what it takes. And and of course, when I was growing up, I think she saw that I can do something, like I can draw, I can do small things here and there. And so she was like, okay, maybe you can do this.
That's interesting. And is the creative process for you more intellectual or emotional?
That's another question that's like, who came first, the chicken or the egg? Because you can't separate. You can't really separate.
One leads to the other as well, I guess.
Your subconscious plays a role. Your thoughts at the moment play a role in the work you make or in the process of making art. Your intellect, you have to also be responsible for the work you're making. There's a lot of things that feed your conscience. Stuff we see, the research we do, our daily interactions, everything, even from the banal things of our daily realities. All these things feed our thoughts. So you can really not separate the intellect from the work, from the, the emotional and the impulsive. All these things work together in tandem.
And how much preparation beforehand goes into a new work? Kind of, how is your creative process? Do you sit down and you think, or do things come naturally to you? Like,
I've always been more of an overthinker.
I think most of us are, to be honest.
I always want to do more research, and why am I using this pattern? Why am I using this? I always want to find a reason. And that also can be a bit exhausting. And I'm slowly learning in my new work to just be more impulsive. I know I said there's no separation, but I mean, less of the thinking of why, and just do it. It's quite a hard balance, but I do a lot of preparation, especially because now I am into colonial histories, and there's a more heavier expectation when you're dealing with such material.
And I guess there's like facts associated. And so it's different. And
it's quite a long process. And sometimes also it's something that I bumped into in my research, and it comes up later in like a very random moment or in a very unexpected moment, and that inspires me to do something else.
So in 2019, you were awarded the BC Silva Scholarship. Can you tell us a bit more about this experience?
I can never thank BC enough for who she has been to me and to many people. God bless her soul. But BC became a mentor for me in many, many ways, and really sort of made the first spark for me to go into a research-based practice. So we developed a really tight relationship when I went to Asiko in the first time. That's where I met BC. And after she passed away, they started a grant in her honor for artists to go to Salzburg to participate in this workshop. And it was the first of that grant. And I'm guessing because of the relationship I had with BC at that time, they thought it well to award me the grant to go to Salzburg and do this workshop. And it was a nice time.
And how is it to change? Now you're in Chicago, for example, but you're from Kenya. You've lived in other places. How does changing environment influence your work? Or does it not?
It has. I think it has been one of the major reasons why I'm doing the work that I'm doing now with colonial histories. because when I moved from Kenya to Chicago to go to the School of the Art Institute of Chicago, I decided to start afresh. Like, I was doing mostly work on feminism, like the idea of Afrofeminisms. And I was just beginning to do that. But when I came to school, I mean, you're just thrown off completely. There's the sort of dislocation from everything you know that is familiar to you. People,
it's like
you
a
know,
blank
places,
slate.
you know. Yeah, exactly. And I was just, my mind was just thrown off, and I couldn't go back to what I was doing. It begged for a discontinue. So I thought of starting fresh with new inspiration. Again, a lot of things were feeding my thoughts. The new reality of the everyday. That's why I said in the beginning that I am now black. You know, I've never thought of myself as black. I still don't.
Yeah.
You know, yeah, I have black skin, yeah, and everything, but the idea or the construct of the black community in a way that is in proximity to whiteness, I have never felt that.
That's what I was going to ask. Do you feel like this new subject came up because it's also very different to be black in Kenya, and then going to the United States and the concept is completely different?
Yeah.
So
I've never felt black there. You know, you think of yourself as African, as Kenyan, but black, you know. Now when you're in proximity, such daily close proximity to all this whiteness, then you're like, oh, I am black. And the way people treat you, you know, even the way people are treating me here now, you know, as I came to this interview, you know, these things always impact how you view yourself, and that seeps into the work that you're doing, of course, because again, you can't separate yourself from the work. And I have learned a lot about my country, my history, being outside Kenya, outside Africa. You know, I've learned it afresh now. I have gone through a process of unlearning and learning again who I am within that history. You know, again, as I was on this process of discovery and shock and horror of becoming black, then I went into the transatlantic slave histories, and it was really hard to claim that. It was really hard, and it was horrific for me. The horrors within that were too much for me. It was too dark. And then I was like, okay, let me go back to a different history, to colonial history, and see how that has impacted my kind of blackness. And that's how I started. And it has gone and grown into the work that I'm entirely doing now.
Which is amazing. So
Thank you.
But I think it's very interesting also for people to understand that it is different for someone to be in their country and then being black in another country. And I think that's an interesting approach that sometimes people don't reflect on, and they generalize. So it's interesting to see that people feel different. So given that we're here, invited by the World Trade Organization, I wanted to ask you, what role do you think art plays in diplomacy?
I think artists have always been trendsetters. Artists have always shaped culture. Artists have always offered a framework with which to speak about the things that are happening in our society. Artists have always done that, and artists will continue to do that. Should artists do that? I don't know.
Definitely.
Why?
I think it's a way of portraying messages that sometimes can be more subtle or not, that it's not through speech or writing, and that it's more intimate, I guess, with the viewer, because it depends on each person's perception, right? The artist, of course, has a message that they want to deliver, but at the end of the day, each person is also going to have a reading of that work, right? So I don't know.
I mean, it's a huge burden. It's a huge burden to always have your work to say something.
Yeah.
I think the responsibility of the artist is just to themselves first. I think it is now everyone's responsibility to have now to speak to the collective voice. If I think of art as social production, thinking of the book by Woolf, then everyone has to do it.
Yeah.
Everyone has to do it. The doctor has to do it.
Yeah. I understand. It's like, it's not the artist's responsibility, or it's not a must to always have something to say, right? It's your work, and you decide when you want to say something and when you just want to do something for yourself. And I guess it's just a repercussion that can sometimes happen, but not always. But I guess the themes that you choose, don't they convey a message?
They do. I don't know. I have a lot to say about that question that I feel it will take time to unpack.
Okay.
Yes, artists have always been doing that to reflect who said that? To reflect the times. Is it Maya Angelou? No?
I think it's possible,
I forget.
Yes. But I think it's interesting, even the fact that the World Trade Organization has, as a director general at the moment, a woman from Nigeria, and it was her choice to invite an institution to specifically showcase and feature African artists. So I think that there is definitely an importance to that. Does that make sense? To introduce and make a stand, and I don't know if it's making a stand, but I mean, for a reason that choice was made. So I think that's interesting.
Yeah, I really do appreciate this effort that they're making. Well, it's the first time they're having an artist in residence. That's a radical decision in itself. And I hope it's not the end of it. It's a good step. There needs to be more engagement nonetheless. But it is a good step. Yeah.
And talking about residencies, what do you think they're important for artists? What are your thoughts on that, to take an artist from their environment and engaging with a completely different culture, kind of seeing the impact of that in their work? And I think that's something very interesting for artists, emerging artists, for example, in Africa, that can have the opportunity to engage with completely different realities and kind of show the world what we have to offer.
Well, I can personally attest to the impact of residencies and dislocation from your familiar place, and that the impact of that in your work. It is always important to have a fresh view of something different and allowing other things to feed into your practice. And go for residencies. Go, even if not for residencies, just go. Travel, yeah. In Swahili we say kuishi kwingi kuona mengi. Yeah. Go out, learn more, know more. Definitely it will grow your work.
And so once you finish in Chicago, are you planning to go back to Kenya?
Oh my God, many people have asked me that question. I am not sure.
How long has it been in Chicago?
I came for school in 2019 and I've not gone back. I'm going back this December. I'm very excited.
You're homesick, no?
Very, very, especially because of the pandemic and all these things that had forced me to also be there this whole time without a break. But I for now it seems like I'm going to live in between both because of Nairobi Print Project, and then I am still at SAIC, and my work is largely also being technically, let me just say this, I need to be in Chicago for my work.
Okay.
And then for Nairobi Print Project, then I need to go back home.
Nice. And also, just because we touched upon how it was different to be in different spaces, did you feel that the way people interacted with your work was different in the US versus in Kenya?
Yeah. I mean, well, in both contexts, the theme of the work was different. In Chicago, like dealing with colonial histories, especially as an African and not as a Black. You get what I'm saying? Yeah. I have found that there's a level of ignorance to these histories, especially. This is sad to say, and I'm sorry to say this very directly, but there's a certain level of ignorance with people about these histories, and even talking about engaging with the work. Sometimes people are scared to offend. So yeah, those are some of the reactions, but also there's another side where people want to know more and want to engage with the work, and the work has some sort of agency in itself to speak. Yeah.
But I totally agree, but I also think it all starts with schools and educational systems, and when people are not taught their own or the other's histories, like it complicates from the beginning, right? So some things should just be taught, even if they're hard to listen to. I mean, it's better like that than being in, like, thinking that things never happened. So, yeah.
True. That's a lot to do with the Western canon.
100%.
Yeah.
And tell us a bit more about your choice of materials. So, that you've been working with photographs, maps, tapestry. Where do these choices come from?
It was sort of inevitable to reappropriate this material in the work, because that is part of the research material. And I don't know, sometimes I say research and I'm like, am I doing research? Because I'm barely scratching the surface of things, you know. Research is such a heavy word, but when I'm making effort to do research, let me say that, these are the things that I'm looking at, going through, other than books and papers of these histories, it's photographs and old maps and old documents. So it begs to be then put into the work, and I appropriate them in prints, in tapestries, making deliberate intentions for each to refer to one another. Does that make sense?
Yes. And I think it's interesting that you were saying that you're just scratching the surface, because I can imagine that it's so much. It must be a bit overwhelming. And everything is so interesting that you're like, what will I talk about? Like, I want to talk about everything. And the question is, how do you move from that to another thing if there's so much to discover? You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's quite a spectacular process, you know. And I always have to keep reminding myself, okay, don't get too overwhelmed with stuff, you know. Go back to what you're looking for initially, because a lot of these are also connected.
And
you
then
start
this
reading
leads to
something
that.
that happened, in Kenya, and you're like, oh, this happened also in India. And you're like,
Yeah.
how am I now in India? Then you go back, oh, it also happened in Nigeria. Like, it's you bounce off so many places geographically, and you're like, oh, wow. It's so connected.
But it's super interesting because you get to learn so much through that.
Yeah,
Right?
it's quite an enlightening process. I'm learning a lot through this work. What was I going to say again?
Well, that was great. I can move on to the next one. So you've recently won the award from Africana Arts and Culture Charitable Foundation to pilot the Nairobi Print Project. Can you tell us about this exciting project?
Yes, and first I'd like to say a huge thank you to the Apakanoics. Apakanoich.
No, you said it right.
No, that will be edited.
Yeah, you just start from there.
Apakanoich.
You can just start from your answer. Then we'll glue it.
Okay. It's really bad because I'm the one who...
No, it's fine. They should give easier names to these things,
First of all, I would like to say a huge thank you to the Africana Foundation for this grant. I am extremely grateful and blessed to have people believe in the vision of Nairobi Print Project. So Nairobi Print Project started years ago in a conversation with BC Silver. The idea of it was quite different from what it has grown and evolved to be. Initially, I was thinking of starting a space, just like a CCA Lagos, a space to show, a library, and possibly maybe grow into doing residencies. But as time went by, the need for that has changed, and my inspiration for that has also evolved into what it is now. I am really inspired by research-based work, and when I think of the resources we have back home and the type of infrastructure around the arts in terms of education and support with just everything that feeds the work that is not technical, it's really not there. When I came to SAIC to do my master's, my eyes were opened to how much more we need back home. Resources, books, I went to the Haskovitz library and I was just overwhelmed. They have the largest Africana collection, I think, in the world. Like an overwhelmingly amount of resource to just study or just, it's a lot. They have a lot. Other than books, manuscripts, and all these things that you can find in a typical library, they have other objects like dolls, like posters, like religious manuscripts, things that are just so valuable, for you as a person to learn about your history, or if you're doing research like me, colonial histories. There's a lot of material there. It is quite rich, and we don't have that back home. Kwana Trust had an art library, and since Kwana is no more, we are missing a lot. There's a lot to be done. So Nairobi Print projects come in that same spirit, to help fill that gap. A lot of these resources also, if like JSTOR, you can pay a subscription, but not so many artists can also access that, But if you make a resource that is open source, it levels the field for people. So it's ideally a library that will be open source for books, manuscripts, and hopefully photographs. And I hope it grows into something much, much bigger than what it is. It will be the first of its kind in Africa. And when I think of it that way, I'm like, wow, it's a huge responsibility, and it's a huge dream. It's very ambitious, and it really begs for so much more support, not just financially, but technically, even mentors, even like it needs so much. It's a huge dream. It will be a very long journey, but it's just beginning. It's just beginning, yeah. And it's a needed thing. We do have art libraries. I'm not saying we don't have art libraries in Africa, but something that is online, that is open source, that is rich in content, we don't have that. And I hope Nairobi Print Project will be that. We are meant to kick off in March next year, and I hope I get other partners to contribute research papers, to contribute books, photographs, people with books that have gone out of print that we can digitize, all these things. I hope it grows and gathers some momentum. For now, I am thinning down the content to colonial histories in Africa, because that's what I'm interested in, because that's really also what is lacking in our curricula in Africa, or at least Kenya. We are taught still history in terms of, in like a very toned down history. The colonialists came, they went, that's it. There's more to that. There's more to telling the story, not from the victor's perspective, from the victim's perspective. The small resistances that happened, other than the huge ones that we always hear and are always circulating in these circles in the internet, yeah.
No, first of all, congratulations, because that's amazing.
Thank you.
And I think you're right. I think that's super important. As we said before, everything starts with education. And as you yourself, you're going through all this research and you're so inspired to create work from it, I think it's important to other people to have access to their own history. And from that, I think a lot of good things come out of that, be it artists, writers, etc. And the journeys are really endless, to be honest, because from residencies to exhibitions, I mean, you can do it all. So that's an amazing project. Congratulations.
Thank you so much. I'm discovering so much that I didn't know, and I didn't even realize, like, wow, well, where did all this information go to?
I know.
Like, how did this happen that I didn't know about it? How am I drawing all these parallels from all these histories? And, you're like, wow, and I'm only just discovering that. It's astonishing for me. And I would love for other people to also discover these things and be in awe of these things like I am. So Nairobi Print Project, library and podcast.
Nice.
Yes.
Nice. So, as we've talked about throughout this podcast, you've been talking about a lot about your research. How did this moment of focusing more in archival research happen? Like, was it a conscious decision, or was it a coincidence that...
To focus on archives?
Yes.
I wouldn't say that I focus on archives as in like the archive, the capital A archive, because materials in these holdings are there's a lot, it's hard to access these things and work with these things. There's a lot of bureaucratic processes to access such material. But I love to work with, like, what I call the migrant images that are just, you see them on the internet circulating, or these free-flowing images that you see once in a while, used in different contexts, and you kind of just really don't know where did this image come from, you know? Sometimes it's hard to verify the information that accompanies the image, like captions on, like someone shared it on Facebook or, you know, those images, I love to work with those images. They have gone through multiple geographies and time.
That's what I was thinking, like kind of the mystery behind it. It's like each one tells a story that maybe we'll never know the ending to. Exactly. So that's very intriguing, actually.
Yeah. Actually, you know, can we cut out that question?
Sure.
All of that question, because it might get me into trouble with copyright.
Okay.
Because there's images that I've used that are copyrighted. And I don't want to spark that conversation.
So do you remember a special moment that completely changed your career as an artist? Or was there a pivoting moment or show? Or
I think there's been many moments. I can't seem to go back to just one particular moment.
That's good. I mean, that's very positive.
Yeah, I mean, there's moments where you're like, wow, I am an artist. Yeah. You look at the work and you're like, wow, I did a good job.
I did that.
Yes, like, wow, Nairobi Print Project, look at me doing this. You're like, there's those moments that you remind yourself of yourself. You're like, wow, this is me. This is what I have become, you know? And you really, when I was starting out, I couldn't see all this journey, of course, you know? But when you look back and you're like, wow, at that moment, I never thought I would be here. I would go to school at the School of the Art Institute of Chicago. And, you know, there's very many moments that have reminded me of myself and remind me that there's more to do. So I can't pick one.
Oh, that's good. So last question that we always ask our guests is, when was the last time you felt truly inspired?
Inspiration for me is both ways. Something bad can inspire me, and in my anger, in my irritation, I am like, I have to explore this in my work. And they're like, something good happens and you're discovering something exciting. You're like, wow, I'd like to do this with my work, you know. The last time I felt inspired is this morning. You know, the interactions that I had on the street with people, and they're like, wow, I don't want to be here. I want to go back home, you know. And that feeds also into what I was saying also, as like being black, you know. Sometimes things happen and it makes you very much aware that you're black. And it reminds you like wow, you know, okay, I have to.
Yeah, because obviously consciously we're not always thinking about that, but then there's things that trigger you or that lead you to remind of that. So yeah, I totally understand that.
Yeah. So inspiration can be all of these good things and bad things that are just, you know, my life is the work.
Well, thank you so much, Jess, for taking the time. It was a pleasure to get to know you better and having you here with us.
Thank you for having me.